if you ever see a crack in what you feel that culture is, and I think most of us know it, we're just too slow to react, cut it out like cancer. And that could be people, it could be a customer, it could be your processes suck and your people are drowning because they just can't get answers to things. And so, we sniff these things out sometimes and we ignore them. And so we had a couple of hires that just didn't fit, and it really started to send our culture down this tailspin. And so we reacted quickly. We're like, okay, we just got to make a change here real quick. So don't ignore it. It doesn't go away. Swallow the frog.
Welcome to Grow Think Tank. This is the one and only place where you will get insight from the founders and the CEOs of the fastest growing privately held companies. I am the host. My name is Gene Hammett. I help leaders and their teams navigate the defining moments of their growth. Are you ready to grow? Culture is very important to your business. You've heard this before. You probably even know that it's important, but why is culture important? Why must we pay attention to the employee experience? Why must we, as leaders, be proactive about creating a place where people can perform at their highest level? Well, it's very simply, our people are our most expensive resources. I haven't met a business yet where people weren't the most expensive resource unless they were selling some product and marking it up. But our people are very valuable to not only to the business as far as what we spend, but also how the business grows. And so if you really value people, then that's the reason why culture is important. I'm Gene Hammett. I'm excited to talk to you today about culture. I'm talking about leadership and about how do you create this culture. I went out into my network and I found a company that I feel like is really doing something special. They're number 136 on the Inc. list, and that's out of 5,000 companies. It's pretty amazing. They only have about 6 people, but that 6 people was so important for this owner to create the kind of culture that really drove value and drove growth, that they did over $5 million in sales in that first 3 years. Now, I share this with you without telling you who it is. It's Johnny Owens, founder of Owens Recovery Science. They create some really amazing products that are getting a lot of buzz in the marketplace, and I'll let him tell you a little bit more about what they're doing. But just know that Johnny is talking today about culture, about why it's important, about why as leaders, even with as few as 6 employees, we should be paying attention to culture, and we should be really creating that kind of place where people love to come to work, they give their all, and they feel that sense of ownership. Before we dive into the interview, I wanted to remind you that you can actually get a tool that I've been working with clients with for the last couple of years. I've refined this tool that's gone through several iterations. Now we have it completely automated. You can actually go online and fill out the leadership quiz. To get the leadership quiz, just go to theleadershipquiz.com. That's pretty easy, right? Theleadershipquiz.com. What you will get when you do that is you will answer a few questions. You will see where you rate based on the core principles of fast growth companies. If you're ready to grow your company or you want to see where you are, then make sure you go to theleadershipquiz.com. Inside it, you will get insight to where you are, understand where you want to improve, and you will get them mapped into the 10 areas that are most specific to fast growth companies. Again, go to theleadershipquiz.com and you can get that right now. And now, here's the interview with Johnny. Hey, Johnny, how are you?
I'm good, Gene. How are you, man?
I'm fantastic. Glad to have you here at Grow Think Tank. I want our audience to know a little bit about the company. So give us an idea of your company and what you do.
So we are a medical device, a medical research and medical education company. So basically my profession is I'm a physical therapist by trade. I was with the DOD for 11 years during the wars. And so this is kind of a spin-off of some of my research that I did with combat casualty care. And now we've moved in to the civilian medical space, primarily orthopedics and rehab, and work a lot, not only with the DOD, but professional teams, college teams, large healthcare systems, U.S. Olympic team, et cetera.
Is this a SaaS product?
No, it's just it's an actual medical device. So it's a
Okay.
tourniquet system with a Doppler built in.
Oh, that's right. So when you talked earlier, you were 136 on the Inc. list with fast growth over a short period of time. You thought culture was an important piece to that. Why is culture so important to your company?
Well, I think I learned a lot from the culture that we had in the DoD during the war. And I think if you think of the big bureaucracy that is the DoD and any government agency, there's a lot of downside to those cultures, but there's a lot of real positive that comes from that when you're in these wars. And so this whole kind of mission, to maybe use another word besides culture, that we're all in this for this specific goal, made it where there was all the attitudes were checked at the door, all the titles were checked at the door. Everyone knew what our mission was. Our mission, medical, was to help the combat casualty get back to its highest level of function. The highest level of function, was always, can we get them back to redeploy or stay on active duty? Or if unfortunately they're too injured, can we at least let them have a highly successful, functional life? So that culture for us then here is we all understand our mission, and we look at that as, okay, we know why we're doing this. And every day we kind of have this, it's cliche, but this team approach.
So when you are bringing in people to, match the culture, what are the things that you do to make sure that someone's aligned to a culture that's going to fit for you?
That's one of our hardest things. That's why we're so small size-wise with full-time employees right now is, basically my wife's an employee. One of her good friends who worked with her for years at a prior firm that she was at is an employee. Her cousin's an employee. My old intern, who's a physical therapist, is an employee, and my old research consultant and my assistant at the Center for the Intrepid, which is where I was with the DoD, is an employee. So we're very insular and really we're talking about bringing on new people. And the first thing we said is, who does anyone know or has a family member that we think would be a good fit? So for us, it's like we want to bring people in. We have a rule, no assholes, So even if you aren't highly trained in what we do, as long as your personality jives with our personality and you're in this for the reasons we're in this, we feel like we can train you up and having a good fit. And that means our whole team gets together and kind of sits with you and decides, is this a good fit? And with our contractors now that we've brought on, same thing. Most of them have been working with us for several years now. And we finally get to the point okay, this person's going to take a bigger role.
And you've got a lot of contractors. Give me an idea of just roughly how many that is.
I think in the US we have probably 5, one in Canada. We have several in Asia and adding more. And in Europe now, I think we're at around 5 to 6. We're starting to add some more in Australia. And those are kind of exponentially growing.
You get quite a bit of production out of a handful of people. So how does that work? How do you make sure that you're getting close to almost $1 million in revenue per employee?
Well, we all cross-trained, so we all know each other's jobs and what it takes to do. And maybe it's a past military thing, but we're pretty lean in understanding what it takes to get the job done with what we have, and understanding that sometimes we can get a solution and systematize. So we're small. We've only been around for 4 years now, but we have SOPs in place, very systematized processes, and these kind of after action reports. So when we do things, even if they're successful, we meet weekly and we'll break down what was good about it and what was a fail point. And the motto is always fail better. And so the fail points are usually what we learn the most from and see if we can fix it. So we're always trying to make what we do is kind of straightforward and as easy as possible.
Hold on for a second. Johnny just talked about failure. Let me ask you a question. What is your relationship with failure? How do you react when something goes wrong? You don't get the expected results. You don't get the deal. Do people worry that their job is at risk? Well, your relationship with failure can really set the tone for how everyone else thinks about failure. Many people think failure is the end. Others think that failure is a learning opportunity. I really, ask you to accept the second one here. This failure is a learning opportunity. It's a step forward. It may not be the step in the right direction, but it does. It's better to take a step forward and get feedback than to be worried about not taking those steps forward. And if you create the kind of culture that is okay to fail, and it even celebrates failure, you can create a place where people are willing to keep pushing forward and grow as fast as you all can handle. Now back to the interview with Johnny.
Well, we talked about culture being number one. So how does it really drive the business to operate at the current level of growth and continue beyond where you are today?
Well, I think it starts from the top. So my job is to make sure that my staff and contractors all know that I'm there for them. So I come in and I basically know that I work for them, and whatever I need to do to support them, I think lets them know I have their back, and also that I can help them get to solutions if they're banging their head against the wall. And then if they feel supported, then it really seems like it carries over to they're trying to help and support our customers. So we really, really pride ourselves on being the best, not only at our products and our research and our training, but in taking care of our people. We have no marketing dollars. We have no salespeople. We just take care of our customer. That's it. And we'll bend over backwards and do whatever it takes. And they all have our cell numbers and our emails, and it just grows, so they talk to each other, and we'd rather get a customer from a referral than we would from some click thing.
So I want to dive into that a little bit, because I want to make sure I understand it correctly. And I talk to a lot of leaders just like you. You talked about, I work for them. So that's kind of like a servant leadership model is that correct in your leadership?
Yeah.
And does that come from the Army?
Yeah, I mean, that should be, and I was in government services, so I wasn't active duty, but that really is you always see like, hey, I'm going to salute the officer above me, but at the end of the day, that person above them needs to serve the lowest level infantry person, because they're the ones who are having to get the job done. So I think understanding like who are the ones that are actually in the trenches getting the job done, you have to support them or you're going to lose the war. And that's where I come from. This is my folks in the trenches. If they're not being supported in whatever capacity, we're going to lose this war.
And you've got a company kind of motto of customer, centric, right? Really adding value, creating products that the customers want. And that's really your sense of referrals. So those things are great. But as a leader, and I don't even know what you would say on this, but as a leader, what's more important, your employees, those team members, or your customers?
My employees.
So when you say that, you say it pretty quickly. I want to make sure I understand this, because I had a debate the other day with a very high-level respected CEO of a Fortune 50 company. Mm-hmm. I won't mention who it is, but it really kind of caught me off guard, because he said I was wrong when I reported that many companies that are growing fast like yours, Johnny, that they put their employees first. So mm-hmm. What is it, and why does that matter for you?
It's much easier to replace a customer than it is to replace one of my team who's part of, my family. And so, there's always going to be another customer. And usually if your culture is right and your mission's right, that if there's some sort of breakpoint or something that's going wrong between an employee and a customer, it's usually the customer that's being the pain in the ass, and they're the problem. And so those are the people we don't even want. We want to choose our customers and get the right ones. So I'd rather have 100 customers I love to help than 10,000 customers that are a pain in my ass. And so my folks, I trust them. If they're like, this guy is just being a total jerk, and I'm happy to jump on a call and like, hey, what's the problem, man? What can I do to help resolve this? And if we can't, then we're done.
I had the debate, and I didn't really take a strong stance on it, because I was actually kind of told how many different ways I was wrong, and given examples of why it's customer first. And I think bigger companies and older leadership still believe that everything that the company's doing is customer first. And I don't mean the company shouldn't put the customer first. I'm just talking about leaders. What is leaders there to do? And I've always thought leaders were there to grow and develop the people so that they can put the customer first.
Right. Right.
When you think about that, what does that mean about the way you lead day in and day out?
Well, again, I think it's that I'm leading to lead my team by serving my team, and them knowing that I'm going to have their back, and they understand. Our mission is we want to be the best at what we do, and they know exactly kind of what our business is and what our model is. That if I've trained them up well enough in that, I don't need to worry about this whole customer issue. It's a non-issue. And I can really tell you, we almost never have a problem. I never really deal with it. The biggest customer problem I get is like, hey, why are you 60 days past due type of thing, But other than that, I think if you set that groundwork up right at the start, and if you have employees that aren't happy, and it's probably your leadership that's not doing it, then you're probably going to have customer issues and they're leaving. And that's a you problem. That's not a customer's right problem. And if you watch movies, that's the big running joke. You see these kind of the shows where the employee, the customer's being a jerk off, and then the boss comes over and berates the employee and fires them, It's like, man, what a jerk. I don't ever want to be that guy.
Yeah, it's hard because I think a lot of people have grown up. My dad worked for the same company for 31 years. It was Delta Airlines. The sense of loyalty that he had growing up was completely different, like polar opposite to, because he didn't even think about working anywhere else. He had a sense of ownership and pride about his company because that was his identity.
Yeah.
But I think now where employees don't typically get that, leaders have a harder job, that if we don't really pay attention to the small details of putting employees first, we miss out on those opportunities to build that connection and loyalty.
Yeah. Well, and I think business is more than profit. And that's where these big companies now, it's always been profit driven. And I'm sure your guy in the top 50 would call me an idiot for that. But if it's all about profit, then you're always going to take the customer side. Your employees are probably not going to be in it for the real reason that you got into this thing. And so, I think that's the disconnect. If this goes away tomorrow, I'm cool. I met my mission. It was to get this, thing out that was something I thought was incredible. And I feel like we've done that. And so if it's all about profit, then I'm freaking miserable. I don't want to come to work anymore.
Well, for those that are in the growing a fast growth company and, trying to put attention to culture, what advice would you have for those leaders?
So I think understand what culture is. It's such a common word now and such a buzzword now that I think people are confusing. I got a ping pong table, or I allow dogs to come to work as culture. Those are just aesthetics, and those are things that, I think sometimes make these companies feel good about themselves. So first, understand, what does culture mean to you? Like the military, culture is very rigid and strict, and it's harsh. It is. Yeah. And during most times, especially in peace times, you're like, this is a pain in the ass. But if the shit hits I'm sorry, I cuss sometimes. But if everything goes to hell in a handbasket, all of that culture that you were taught to follow these rules, don't step out of line, to understand that you stay in this quadrant, they're going to save your life. So that culture is way different than maybe some Silicon Valley culture that's like, we got to recruit people that want to play video games at the same time they're coding. So I think understand like what your culture and mission is. Ours is to not only you kind of serve each other, but to serve this whole business that we've built, which is around this blood flow restriction rehab technique. And we're understanding like that takes research, that takes training people, that takes selling it, and that takes supporting our customers. And then we get these testimonials back from patients and providers that are like, this is the best thing since sliced bread. You guys are like amazing. And it makes us feel good. So I think for someone starting out, figure out what your culture needs to be.
And when you think about that, what's the next step after that you would tell someone?
If you ever see a crack in what you feel that culture is, and I think most of us know it, we're just too slow to react, cut it out like cancer. And that could be people, it could be a customer, it could be your processes suck and your people are drowning because they just can't get answers to things. And so, you know, we sniff these things out sometimes and we ignore them. And so we had a couple of hires that just didn't fit, and it really started to send our culture down this tailspin. And so we reacted quickly. We're like, okay, we just got to make a change here real quick. So don't ignore it. It doesn't go away. Swallow the frog.
You know, I talk to a lot of leaders that maybe they avoid confrontation, and they feel like maybe someone else is supposed to take care of that. They want to empower their people. But what you're talking about is different than avoiding confrontation. You're really like hitting confrontation head on. Am I reading that right?
Yeah. And it's usually out there, you know, if you put it out, it's, you know, we had a meeting. I wasn't able to get some solutions to these questions they had. And this problem kept going and going and going. I didn't know the solutions. So I had to figure out, you know, where are we going to get an answer real quick so we can make our people not miserable. So that was confrontation to a problem, but it could also be, hey, this employee is showing up 30 minutes late every day and it keeps getting worse and worse. Let's nip this in the bud because it's making the other folks around here kind of upset. So yeah, it's just going at it. It's not like, hey, I'm dropping the hammer on here because I'm a mad guy. It's like, this is a problem. Here's why it's a problem. Let's cut this cancer out.
Now, as hard as you seem, and you have this military static, I bet there's a caring side behind you because you don't put employees first without that sense of caring. How far do you take it as a leader to truly care about your employees?
I try and take it as far as I possibly can. So I'm medical. So, you know, and I think if you're going to be in medical and you're going to be successful in it, you have to want to help others and care for others. And so I've been a clinician for over 20 years now. And I love helping people and treating patients. And so that's in me, and the same thing with my folks. You know, I want to see the people that work here. I would love to see them grow and go start their own thing, or feel confident enough if they wanted to leave, they could tell me because they've got some great new thing that some other company wants them to do. But I'm going to be that guy they remember that I supported them and I tried to help them grow, and not only what we do here as a business, but you know, how to work as a team, how to have fun as a team, how to do training together for stuff outside of this, like, you know, understanding our 401ks and savings and things like that. So.
Fantastic. Well, Johnny, I really appreciate you being here at Growth Think Tank. One last thought for you. Share with us one defining moment you've had as a leader that you felt like you learned the most from. Yeah,
so you sent this question at a time and I thought long and hard. You know, I've got a lot of failures that I learned from for sure. And I hate to keep going like back to military, but I think just working there during the wars, I learned so much. And so, you know, I really, one moment I remember I came in and, you know, when you're working the DOD, you have meetings about meetings and you have all these trainings and just so much crap to deal with. And I was just really all worked up and kind of pissed off one morning. I don't remember what it was. And one of our guys, Center for the Intrepids, the DOD's kind of leading site for amputee care and limb salvage. So the blast trauma is the worst of the worst. The young kid was a bilateral above knee amputee. So he's in a wheelchair and his arm was in one of these frames. He was trying to save his arm. And he asked me what my problem was. And I said, nothing, man. And he just pissed off about a bunch of stuff. And he told me, you know, it took me almost 2 hours to get ready to come in here today and catch a bus so I can see you. And so he said, you really need to check your priorities here and why you're here today. And so that was like a kick in the you know what for me. And I kind of stepped back and said, you know, everything in life, you're there for a moment. And it could be when I'm with my kids or whatever. But when I walk into here at work, that's what I'm here for, is to lead this business and to serve and put a smile on my face as soon as I walk in the door, no matter what's happened, and get this day off as good as I can. And that was trying to be as foo-foo and fluffy as I can, but that's it. Just a redirect when you come in, this is your mission, and treat it like a mission, not that this is just a job.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that with us, Johnny. Thanks for being here at Growth Think Tank. Thanks for sharing your wisdom.
Yeah. Thanks, Gene. Appreciate it, man.
Wow, love that interview. Really appreciate you tuning in here. If you're hearing my voice now, you've listened to all the way to the end. One of my favorite pieces about what Johnny talked about was the failure inside the organization and how they failed forward each iterative step to this process. A lot of companies that aren't growing as fast really avoid failure. They're really trying to mitigate those risks. And I get that we need to put boundaries around it, but we also need to be okay with a little bit of failure, and really helping that go along is what Johnny has created inside the culture. So thank you for tuning in here to Growth Think Tank. Thank you for sharing this episode with one person that you know wants to create a culture that they're proud of, and they want to be a leader that is evolving every step of the way. As always, lead with courage.